greater purveyor of that power chord than ACDC.
In the world of rock and roll, very few bands were loved the way ACDC was loved. Not just respected, not just admired, loved. They were the ultimate masters of the power chord, the kings of raw electricity. And instead of hoarding that love, ACDC spent their entire career giving it back, building bridges while they built one of the greatest legacies rock has ever seen. So today, we're diving into 7 bands that ACDC truly loved, bands that inspired them, stood beside them, and in some cases, helped save the legacy itself. And we're starting with the band that sat at the very top of the mountain. Number 1. The Rolling Stones. For ACDC, the Rolling Stones weren't just another legendary group. They were the measuring stick. For Malcolm and Angus Young, the Stones represented everything rock and roll was supposed to be. Swing, groove, danger, and deep blues soul in a world that was slowly becoming plastic and overproduced. Malcolm Young, the unshakable engine behind ACDC's sound, was famously allergic to nonsense. No filters. No compromises. He once laid it out plainly. If we're having a party, we're not putting on ACDC. We'll play the Stones, Chuck Berry, Little Richard. That kind of stuff. To Malcolm, rock bands were everywhere, but real rock and roll bands were nearly extinct. Most modern rock, in his eyes, was stiff. No movement, no jungle rhythm. But the Stones, they belonged in the sacred circle. He even once said there were only 2 true rock and roll bands left, the Rolling Stones, and ACDC. The respect went both ways. Keith Richards, a man who famously dislikes almost everyone, was a massive admirer of Malcolm's rhythm playing. He once summed up ACDC perfectly by saying, "Bless their hearts. They're a great little bundle of energy." That mutual admiration became reality in 2003 when ACDC opened for the Stones in Germany and later at the massive SARS benefit concert in Toronto. Angus and Malcolm ended up on stage jamming "Rock Me Baby" with Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. Angus later recalled the moment with pure fanboy joy, Keith walking over casually and saying, "All right, we'll bring you on for Rock Me Baby. It's in C. You'll be fine." But the most emotional chapter of this shared history came at the very end. As Malcolm's health declined and dementia began to take its grip, much of the world slipped away from him, except music. Angus revealed that in Malcolm's final days, he would sit beside him and play guitar just to keep him calm. And when Angus reached for a record, it wasn't ACDC. It was the Rolling Stones' blues-heavy album Blue and Lonesome. Even as memories faded, that music still lit a spark in Malcolm's eyes. That's not fandom. That's brotherhood, rooted in the deepest soil of rock and roll. Number 2. The Who. Another band that shaped ACDC before they ever shook stadiums was The Who. Before the world tours and the thunder, Malcolm and Angus were just 2 kids in Sydney searching for something louder, heavier, something that rattled the ribs. They found it in 1965. My Generation didn't just catch Malcolm Young's attention, it rewired his brain. Malcolm later admitted that while the Beatles and the Stones were dominating, The Who sounded different. Heavier. More violent. That word, heavier, changed everything. He realized power didn't come from complexity. It came from hitting fewer notes like a wrecking ball. Angus took that lesson and turned it into chaos. He looked at Pete Townsend and saw a guitarist who could make a single chord feel like a declaration of war. Angus loved how Pete could live on one string and still make it explode. But there was a twist. Pete stood tall and steady while the guitar moved around him. Angus, being smaller, had no choice but to move with the guitar. That's how the Schoolboy Seizure was born. In 1976, ACDC found themselves sharing a festival bill with The Who in Germany. Backstage, bands were messing with each other, pulling pranks, trying to throw one another off. But once ACDC hit the stage, everything stopped. Pete Townsend stood side stage watching this tiny kid in a school uniform absolutely destroy the crowd. He later admitted that while The Who were an ideas band, ACDC was the Coca-Cola of rock. Perfect, consistent, and unstoppable. That nod meant everything. Number 3. The Angels. If idols helped shape ACDC, the Angels were the brothers who believed in them, and were believed in right back. In 1975, ACDC were tearing through South Australia with a young support band called the Keystone Angels. Malcolm and Angus didn't see an opening act. They saw destiny. Malcolm and Bon Scott personally marched into the offices of George Young and Harry Vanda and demanded they sign the band. That push changed everything. The Angels dropped the Keystone, signed with Albert Productions, and became Australian rock royalty. Offstage, the bond was just as deep. The bands jammed together, swapped instruments, and drank into the early hours. Bon Scott loved them so much he regularly joined them on stage, something he rarely did for anyone. When ACDC left Australia to conquer the world, it was the Angels who inherited the crown back home. That wasn't rivalry. That was a torch being passed. Number 4. Aerosmith. Here's where things get unexpected. ACDC didn't get universal love when they first hit America, but Aerosmith had their backs. During the 1978 Power Age tour, promoters were terrified of ACDC. Too loud, too aggressive, too dangerous. Some actively tried to kick them off bills. Steven Tyler wasn't having it. He gave promoters an ultimatum. If ACDC doesn't play, Aerosmith doesn't play. Tyler later said ACDC felt like the future, a giant middle finger to the establishment. Joe Perry has since called Power Age his favorite ACDC album, saying it captured everything he loved about rock in its purest form. That bond came full circle in 2003 when Aerosmith inducted ACDC into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Tyler described their sound as a two-car garage at 2 a.m. Then he joined them on stage for You Shook Me All Night Long, shaking the walls of the Waldorf Astoria. Even today, Tyler says one of his biggest dreams is touring with ACDC, money be damned. Number 5. Judas Priest. If any band felt like true brothers to ACDC, it was Judas Priest. During the 1979 Highway to Hell European tour, these two forces traveled together, literally. They shared tour buses, shared meals, shared war stories. KK Downing has spoken about how rare ACDC's hospitality was in that era. No egos, no nonsense, just hard-working rockers. Rob Halford watched Bon Scott every night from the wings, completely mesmerized by his everyman magic. There was no competition, only a shared mission to be louder than everything else on earth. That tour didn't just make history. It cemented a lifelong bond. Number 6. Guns N' Roses. Then came 2016, the moment everything almost collapsed. Brian Johnson had to step away mid-tour. Fans panicked. Refunds poured in. The machine stopped. And then, Axl rose. Not as a gimmick, not as a fill-in, but as a fan living his ultimate dream. Axl showed up with a broken foot, strapped into Dave Grohl's throne, singing ACDC songs with terrifying respect and intensity. He pushed Angus to dig deep, bringing back forgotten Bon-era cuts and restoring a dangerous edge to the setlists. Angus called Axl a lifesaver. They didn't just finish a tour. They protected a legacy. Number 7. Rose Tattoo. Finally, there's Rose Tattoo, a band ACDC respected so deeply they practically demanded their producers sign them. Lightning and thunder. Two sides of the same Australian steel coin. Behind the scenes, Angus and Angry Anderson formed a lifelong brotherhood. Even during the controversial Axl years, Angus leaned on Angry for guidance, quietly revealing plans for the future long before the world knew. And there you have it. The 7 bands ACDC loved the most. If we had room for an 8th, who do you think deserved it? Drop your pick in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into rock history, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell, because this is JosBACK Stage Tales, and we're just getting started.